don't have a gavel, so that'll have to do. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Mayor and Board of Aldermen for Tuesday, February the 21st. I have only one change to the agenda that I'm aware of, a change at 6D1, request permission for 2 employees to attend that summer conference, not 3. It reads 3. If you'll change that to 2, that is the only change I have for this agenda. Any department head have a change? All right. All right. Then I would ask for a motion to adopt the agenda with that one change.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? A quick mayor's report because we've got a long agenda tonight. We are spending a lot of time right now lobbying our legislators for money for our police station. We have asked for $7.5 million to assist in that effort. And I'm working every day with legislators, telling the story of a town of 28,000 taxpayers that has 60,000 people here on a regular day and 100 to 200,000 on the weekends. And so we believe that an investment in Oxford, Mississippi by the legislature is important for the whole north half of the state. You may have seen the governor's transportation proposal that came out a few days ago. We were thrilled to see that he had proposed $150 million for Highway 7 from Highway 6 to the 7-9 split. Now, it's kind of like I say often, we see that we have authorizations often at the federal level, but until you have an appropriation, don't count your chicks before they hatch. That's kind of what this is, but it's the first step. And so we are thrilled to see that the governor did include Highway 7 in his list of projects. That will have to be approved by both the Senate and the House. But again, we're working hard on that, and I'll be back in Jackson tomorrow morning, pushing as hard as I can. We are getting ready for a busy spring. Unfortunately, Oxford doesn't look like it usually does since we don't have one leaf on any bush in town, and our tulips poked their heads out way too early, and then they got snapped back by the cold. And so we are doing our best to get Oxford in shape for what will be kind of a spring football season. The second weekend in April, we have the Red-Blue game and an SEC baseball series. The third weekend in April, we have the Morgan Wallen concerts on Saturday and Sunday and the LSU baseball series. The next weekend is double-decker, and I believe that's the Georgia baseball series. Is that right? I can't remember. And then we have two graduation weekends in a row. So we are preparing, like I said, for a spring football season, and we are thrilled, and we want to make good on what we've sold. When we've told what to expect when you come to Oxford, we want to make good on that, and that takes every department in the city. So with that, I will ask the board to authorize the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on February the 7th.
Motion made. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ask you to authorize the approval of accounts for all city departments.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ask you to consider the consent agenda with the one change at D1.
Motion to consider the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next on our agenda is to approve an appointment to the Oxford School Board. I will say that this group of applicants is the strongest applicant pool that we have ever had for a school board position. And after doing interviews today, the board, I would like to recommend to the board the appointment of Lolita Gregory to the Oxford School Board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, great, thank you. I know that she will serve us well. Consider an appeal of the Historic Preservation Commission's decision on case 700, a request to demolish the existing house at 1431 South 10th Street and build a new house. So we will start with our planning staff presenting this case that is up for appeal.
Thanks, Robin.
Oh, there you are. I was like, where is she?
I'm over here.
Sorry.
This item was last heard by the Historic Preservation Commission in October of 2022. At that meeting, the commission denied the applicant's request to demolish the existing building located at 1431 South 10th Street. The building is listed as contributing in the South Lamar Historic District and is estimated to be built circa 1935. Prior to that request for demolition, the applicant received approval for extensive renovation plans that included retaining the existing contributing resource, and that's case number 669. The applicant began construction, including removing all of the siding and gutting the interior of the house, before returning to the commission at their first hearing in September to request demolition of the building. The building has been sitting vacant and deteriorating with little effort to secure or protect it since since that siding was removed. So it's been open to the elements for months. The item was tabled at the September 2022 meeting of the commission before the final vote to deny the demolition request at the October meeting. At that September hearing of the commission, 4 nearby residents of the property were present to offer comment. And at the October meeting, 2 nearby residents were present to offer comment. And there were several emails with comment from neighbors, which were distributed to the commission and which were included in your case file. The applicant's lawyer provided a letter with the request for the appeal. I'd like to address a couple of items from that letter. It states that similar requests for demolition by property owners of other structures in the immediate vicinity have been allowed with little comment. This is incorrect. For each demolition in the historic district, the same criteria are read into the record and considered by the commission as required by section 5427 of the preservation ordinance. So when you're going through your packet, the 3 cases related to this house were included, and you'll look in the minutes and see that those criteria were included at each hearing. Additionally, the letter states that the city's professional staff made inquiry as to the floor plan and interior features, which were then packaged and used against the Hales. Floor plans are required as a part of any large addition for a certificate of appropriateness request. They're required for practical reasons. Like, for instance, if you're looking at exterior plans and you notice that there's a certain rhythm of windows and there's a window missing, you look at the floor plan and you can see that maybe it's a kitchen and that's where the range is, or it's a bathroom and that's why there's no window. So those floor plans are needed to make sense of the exterior elevations that the commission is voting on. While the use of interior spaces is not considered by the commission, the guidelines for new construction do address scale, which is the relative size of a building in relation to its neighbors, proportion, by recommending that the proportions of a new building should be compatible with those of its neighbors, and massing, noting that a building's massing significantly contributes to the character of the street, and that a new building should respect and be compatible with the massing of neighboring buildings. So staff is requesting that the Board of Aldermen uphold the commission's decision to deny the request to demolish the building. Should the board choose to overturn the decision, staff is requesting that the plans for new construction will go before the commission for that lot, because what's proposed does not meet the design guidelines. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have about the staff report.
Does anyone have a question about the staff report? I believe that we have people, both the appellant being represented by Brad Walsh and members of the community that have sent emails and letters who wish to speak as well. I'm going to ask that each side limit your comments to 20 minutes. If you want to save some of yours to be utilized at the end for a rebuttal, that is fine. But I'm going to ask that each side, not each individual that stands up, that each side limits their comments to 20 minutes. And so, Brad, we'll start with you as the appellant.
Thank you, Mayor. I think if you've seen your packet, any assertion that this house being open to the elements is somehow hurting it is a little off base. This thing is rotting down. It's got severe termite damage, as you can see in the pictures, in the termite inspection report. Also, the engineer has basically said it is just an unsound building due to the termite damage. So whether or not it's exposed to the elements, I don't know what you're going to save from this building if you're going to try to, which kind of brings me to my next point, which is your ordinance isn't all that you look at here. There's an enabling statute that gives you, basically gives you the right to have a historic commission ordinance. And it's got some limitations in it. One of the limitations is that you cannot, I think it's in paragraph G, is that you cannot consider interior arrangement with respect to the buildings. Just about every comment that was made about this plan was that it had too many bedrooms and they were going to use it as an Airbnb. Some of the commenters that made those assertions even have their own Airbnb, so I guess they could have been concerned about the competition. But you're really not supposed to be considering the interior arrangement as part of the historic commission's charge here. And so that was our objection to that. Probably more importantly in this case, though, is subparagraph D of the statute. And it says that, talks about that the document that you guys grant to be able to do the demolition permit is called Certificate of Appropriateness. And it says no commission may deny a certificate of appropriateness for demolition if denial of such a certificate would cause unreasonable economic hardship to an owner. Now, the case file has in it the testimony in the original historic commission meeting of the structural engineer who said basically you'd have to build a cage over this thing to preserve it and to be able to prop it up enough to proceed with it, and it would create an unreasonable economic hardship to be able to do so. A lot of the other comments had specific, or one of the other comments had specific instances of homes, mostly on North and South Lamar, that were not demolished. And I think that's great that they weren't. But these were also very pretty homes. They're very large homes. And you're comparing that to this house that has really and truly, it's just plain ugly. Especially with the additions that had been made to it in the 60s, it's just not an attractive house. You walk into from the front door into the master bedroom. It's got low ceilings. It's not really a great looking house that I think has anything to do with the nature of this particular neighborhood. And one of the things the professional staff did weigh in on was that they talked about what the style of the house was, and I'm quoting this. They called it a minimal traditional style, whatever that is, with forms of traditional eclectic houses, Tudor, colonial, revival, etc. I mean, I know what a colonial is. I know what a Tudor is. I don't know what any of this other stuff is, and that's one of the problems that a homeowner would have when they've got design by committee such as this, is how do they know how do they know what fits in this particular neighborhood when, let's face it, this neighborhood is as eclectic as any with respect to style of houses. You can always point to another house and say, well, it doesn't match that. As to size and scale objections, the architect did a survey with respect to it, and this house is comparable with several in the neighborhood. You guys are no doubt aware that in these neighborhoods, it runs the gamut. Really large homes, really small homes remain that way. Again, most of the objections, and I'll address any that come out tonight that are any different, but really had to do with people's suppositions that this would be used as student housing, student rentals, or Airbnb, that sort of thing. And that just isn't the case. And I don't know what the homeowners can do any more than they've already done to allay some of those fears. But the fact of the matter is, even if they went out and said, we're going to Airbnb this thing, much like Dixieland, I think is getting ready to be near where we are, Mr. Heineman, even if they said that, it can't be considered with respect to the Historic Commission's charge, which is not to look at anything with respect to the interior or future use or any of those type of things. And I'll reserve whatever time I've got left for any rebuttals.
All right. Anyone in the audience that wants to speak against the appeal? Mr. Abernathy?
Thank you. I will go as I'm not trying to be shy of words. Yes, I'm against the appeal. Several things. Don't really have notes, but I'll just speak as they come to me. If we're going to have a historic preservation commission and we're going to have people on staff and we're going to go through all this, every time somebody wants to tear a house down that's 70 to 100 years old, that finds a little bit of some rot, some termite damage, and they're able to come before this board and get their way, then why are we going through the charades? I've served on that board, as many of you know. You've got a professional staff that's trained in these items. They've, in 2 different meetings, given their point of view, which is it should be denied. I've sent you all a letter. I guess people in the audience don't know, but I went through probably 5 different houses within the historic district that have had major termite damage, major rot. I gave examples of how severe all of this was. I gave examples of houses where nothing's left but the exterior siding and the front porch, where all of those things were encountered: mold, rot, mildew, you name it. If you're going to buy a house that old, and because you find some rot and you want to tear it down, then you shouldn't have bought the house, because you buy a 70-year-old house, that's going to happen. In my letter, my major 2 objections were one, the structure, and I noted I think 5 different structures that I've worked on that any structural engineer would have deemed dangerous, unfit, you name it. It went through many technical examples that you find. Had a structural engineer say one time they don't build houses like they used to. Thank goodness. You've got 2 contractors on the board and 1 architect that heard all of this, that's seen all of this, that agreed with your staff. As to the design, I disagree. Real simple. If you play the Sesame Street game, which one of these is not like the other? When this house is built, it is going to be the house that is not like the other. I mentioned a case 701, which came after this case, which was a demolition. And the house that was proposed was appropriate. It was approved. The guidelines mention, and I'm going to read this, mention scale, proportion, rhythm, massing, and height. This house fails. I have seen the rendering, and I'll tell you, you can take a rendering in 3D and you can scale it up and down however you want to. I don't believe this house is in scale nor rhythm with this neighborhood. Quick note, in the first meeting, the owner's designer said that Mr. Hale loves this design. Well, it's real simple. If he loves this design, I think if he came back with something like the design that's what's there, people probably wouldn't object, but he hasn't. He has come up with something that, in layman's term, absolutely is too large and does not fit in with the neighborhood. So, thank you.
Thanks for your time. My name's Brad Freeman. I bought a property on South 10th about a year ago. Me and my wife did, 1420 South 10th. We largely bought there because we valued the single-family homes and aligned with the historic preservation's philosophies, if you will. And in fact, we had a contract on this exact same home, and we got about 2 weeks away from it, and we found out the extensive termite damage and other issues with it, and we decided right then and there we were going to pull out of this project, just because we knew kind of what we were quote unquote up against. Like, we couldn't tear it down, and it was just going to get out of our budget at that point in time. So again, I don't know everything that Mr. Abernathy's been through, but we knew we'd be up for a big fight because we couldn't tear it down, or was told it'd be almost impossible to do so. So we went down the street and renovated and rehab an older property. That's all I got. Just wanted to weigh in kind of on the decision-making process.
Brad, you don't want it torn down, is that what you're saying?
No.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak for or against? No, that's fine. Yes, Bob, come on up.
I'm Bob Vasilya, live at 1508 South 10th Street. One thing I want to clarify, this house wasn't built in 1935. It was built when my wife was born, after my wife was born, and quite frankly, she's not that old. But it was built, I think, about 1950. And Mr. Walsh, I want to beg to differ with you. When the house was occupied by J.C. and Nina Goolsby, it was not what you see now. It was a beautiful home. It was very well maintained. It was pretty. It was a show place. In fact, the University of Mississippi used to have parties there all the time. Since that time, it's passed hands and it's fallen down into disrepair. And at the risk of upsetting my neighbors, I'll speak for my wife and myself, we don't really care if it's torn down, right? What we care about is what goes back in its stead. Something that is in keeping, something that's not going to have cars parked on the street, on the front yard. It's just, when you count bedrooms and you come up with a number of 20 people that can be sleeping there, that's a lot of people on that street. So, and I know there's other large homes here, but it just didn't seem right. So I apologize to my neighbors, but tearing it down is not a problem. It depends on what they go back with.
Thank you, Bob.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Okay.
Hello, Marvin Smith. My parents and I own the house next door at 1429 South 10th Street. I really about the same as Bob just said. You know, love the people that own that house, but it's really past its time. And I just, honestly, I don't want to stir up anything, but I just feel like sometimes the board is going to have to face exceptions. You know, and I think in my mind, this house is gone, and it would be unfair to make them pay that kind of financial to fix it up. And so, in my opinion, it should be torn down, and we have a nice, pretty house put back there. And I hope that you guys would be the backstop to the commission, but sometimes they go too far.
Thank you. Jack?
I'm Jack Garner. I'm chairman of the Oxford Historic Preservation Commission, and I'm here to encourage our Board of Aldermen to uphold the decision of not only the professionals in historic preservation that are employed by the city, but the unanimous decision of the 9 Oxford citizens who gave careful consideration to the request to demolish the house and build another house in its place. We heard their proposals on 2 occasions at commission meetings, and I believe we gave them every opportunity to understand what our responsibility is, and that is to uphold the guidelines that have been approved by the alderman. And after careful consideration, and I would say completely unbiased thinking, we decided to not approve the request. And I'm here just to encourage you to support the decision of your commission.
Thank you, Jack. All right, anybody else? Hey there.
Hi, my name is Katrina Horn. I live at 1424 South 10th Street. And I just want to echo what everybody else has said. I think it's really important that the Board of Aldermen uphold the decisions of the commission that they put in place. You adopted the ordinance, you created the commission, and I just think you should back them up.
Thank you. All right, any others? All right, so board members, do y'all have questions of the professional staff, comments? Oh, Brad, did you want to say something first? Okay, sure.
One of the things in the, I think this addresses some of the comments. One of the things in the ordinance 5427 is that the staff's was given 60 days to try to review whether or not there was basically any saving of the building and make suggestions. They didn't do any of that. It's just the record doesn't reflect any consideration of that. All that the record does reflect is a structural engineer, somebody trained in it, which I don't think any of the staff even are, saying that this is an unsound building and that it would cost an enormous amount of money to rectify. I really almost want to thank Mr. Freeman. I mean, I think he makes the point. He looked at it. He did his due diligence. Good for him, but are we going to rely on, what if you don't hire the right private inspector to look at your building, and you're stuck with something that you just paid a pretty good amount of money on, and you can't do anything with it because you can't get past a board that won't offer you any solutions. These folks have, time and time again, you've heard about the footprint. They've scaled back the number of rooms. They've scaled back the parking. They've got this thing to scale. Really and truly, I think what they need to know now is they can at least demolish it and go forward with some plan. Again, it'll probably be designed by committee, because everybody apparently that pays taxes here in town gets a vote about what these people's house is going to look like. But at least that's something, and they can go forward and not have the worry of a house that's just not sound and can't be made sound without an economic hardship.
Hey, Brad, real quick. A while ago, and it caught me. A while ago, you said they purchased this house, and as they purchased it, they considered it ugly. That stuck with me. I mean, if they thought it was ugly, why did they buy it to begin with?
Oh, no, I said it was ugly. I'm sorry. I think it's ugly. I don't know if they liked it or not. Okay. I apologize.
That was just kind of,
yeah.
Okay.
No, it's now when I said it was ugly too, the back part of the house is it'd be like, I'm sure that Elvis Presley's mansion was in all kind of architectural digests in its day, but it hadn't been anything done to it since the 60s. It's low ceilings, and in the back, the additions just weren't in keeping with the building.
Brad, when you talk about plans, and this is, of course, a single-family neighborhood, wouldn't the number of bedrooms be relevant to the fact of whether or not this is going to be a single-family residence?
Brian, first off, I think they've scaled back the number of beds. They'd scaled back the number of bedrooms. I don't know how many bedrooms your house has, but in your house and my house would not be appropriate on this lot. I get that, but it is a very deep lot. It goes way back, and it's I think people ought to be able to make use of their property. As you look at least to me on the elevations and everything straight on. It looks in keeping with kind of a bungalow type house,
but the ordinance addresses use as well, as far as consistent with the neighborhood and its use being what you build back and how it's used, and that sense is what I'm more addressing than its look. I mean, you can never, no commission can, if you want to paint your house purple polka dots, the Preservation Commission can't grant or deny that. You can paint it whatever color you want as long as you're allowed to paint it. And the same would go with tearing down houses. You don't tear down houses just because they're ugly, right? So my point being is what you build back has to be consistent according to the ordinance, has to be consistent with what the neighborhood is, and whether it be 6, 8, whatever, isn't the number of bedrooms, while not considering design and everything, but isn't it a factor that you weigh into whether or not you can consider this and state with good faith that this is going to be a single-family residence?
That's not part of the ordinance, though. Use is, I mean, maybe it is, you tell me, or let me know where in the ordinance it talks about use. Use is really for you guys to decide if you want to, if this board decided that they hated Airbnbs, if they were a problem, this board could take that up and do something about it. But under the present structure of this ordinance and the enabling statute, you don't get into use.
But in the zoning, the use?
Sure.
And that, I think, it may not say it in the ordinance, but I think you would say your use is what the zoning is.
That's right. So you've got those rules that apply to this property zoning. So, I mean, so you use that. Don't try to use the historic commission for something that it's not, or it's going to get really ugly really quick.
Absolutely. As far as I may have misspoke, as far as use, but being is consistency of what's built back, being a single-family home, would not the number of bedrooms be relevant to whether or not it is going to be a single-family home?
Again, they scaled
Scaled
that back. They took down. They have worked both with the neighbors, or tried to work both with the neighbors and the professional staff to lop off size and lop off rooms and what have you. I mean, I think they're trying to do that, but it's just, to me, as a code head, it's not in the code for them to decide, for the planning commission, the historic commission to decide that.
And there's nothing in the record as to what it would cost to rehab it from the standpoint of as the engineer said, brace it to rehab.
I think he said build a cage over it.
Yeah.
I can tell you that's going to be expensive, but there's nothing.
There's nothing there.
There's
Nobody's.
That's right.
Any other board members have questions for Brad?
Thank you.
If not, Kate or Ben, do you have anything else to?
This is contributing resource, correct?
Okay, what was the second part of your? If you approve it or disapprove, either way, we would like you to.
Yeah, even without the question of number of bedrooms, staff doesn't believe that the current design meets the requirements of the design guidelines. Whether and I would like to point out that staff and the commission are not really in control of what neighbors get up and say at the hearing. I don't believe that the commission was basing their decision on the number of bedrooms or the use of the building. The commission's comment was limited to the design of the building, the massing, the proportion, the scale, et cetera.
That is correct. No,
So Rick, to answer your question, were you to overturn the commission's decision, we are requesting that the design would be approved by the Preservation Commission, because at the hearing, only the demolition was voted on.
You didn't vote on the design because the demolition was denied, so there was no need to consider the design.
Yes.
And so this board is being asked to overturn the decision by the Historic Preservation Commission. And that decision denied the ability to demolish the existing home.
Correct.
So are there any other questions from the board? If not, then it would take a motion to overturn the appeal. All right, with no motion to overturn the appeal, the Historic Preservation Commission's decision stands. All right, next on our agenda is request approval for a final plat amendment for case 2930 Heritage Center subdivision, lots 28 and 29, located on Galleria Lane, being further identified as PPINs 21057 and 21056.
Okay, this request is for an amendment to the final plat to the Heritage Center subdivision. The subject properties are located on Galleria Lane, just off of Heritage Drive. The applicant seeks to combine these two lots into one new lot, which will measure 0.68 acres. Mississippi subdivision law requires that the applicant proposing any change in a platted subdivision notify all persons to be adversely affected thereby or directly interested therein, and requires their signature of approval on the proposed modifications. The applicant did identify those persons and provide letters from those parties. At the February 13th Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the request for the final plat amendment with the conditions that are listed in the staff report. So staff is recommending approval of the final plat for the Heritage Center subdivision with the conditions listed in your report.
Motion made to approve with conditions.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Kay. Request approval of a preliminary and final plat amended for case 2916 Oxford Commons Lots LLC for the crossing at Oxford Commons for property located at Commonwealth Boulevard, being further identified as PPINs 4958, 39807, 39475, 40363, 40367, 40715. You see all of them listed. Yeah, just, you see them up there.
Right.
Thank you, Robert.
This request is for an amendment to the preliminary and final plat for the crossing. Subject property is located in Oxford Commons PUD on Commonwealth, south of Della Davidson Elementary. Applicant is requesting to add to the existing single lot to expand across Commonwealth Boulevard to allow for a second phase and to add common area to enlarge the stormwater detention. Proposed amended lot will meet the dimensional requirements of the underlying zoning. Mississippi subdivision law requires that the applicant proposing any change in a platted subdivision notify all persons to be adversely affected thereby or directly interested therein, and requires their signature of approval of proposed modifications. Identification of who such persons may be is left to the discretion of the applicant. In this request, applicant has provided a letter that there is only one such person and that they do not object to the modification. Engineering provided comments related to site development, access, water and sewer, and stormwater in the accompanying site plan staff report. At the February Planning Commission meeting, the commission recommended approval of the request for preliminary and final plat approval with the conditions that are listed in the staff report, and staff recommends approval of the request with the three conditions that are listed in the memo.
Motion made to approve.
With the staff's recommendations.
Staff recommendation.
All right, is there a second?
Yeah. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Robert. Seth, come on up and give us an Oxford Park Commission annual report for 2022.
Paper separate. 31,138 registrations we had this year. That does not
Wow.
include people who are coming in for pickleball or coming in to play free play basketball or playing on the arcades upstairs, playing tennis. This is something that we can track through our system. That's how many
Those are people that
registrations.
registered for a class
Correct.
of some sort or an activity. That's awesome.
Those numbers, as you can see, I believe it was, hopefully it was added. There should be a little Excel format that goes through our numbers that I included. And I'll start with them. I mean, it's hard to try to keep something 3 to 5 minutes where we spend a year providing these.
You're not
things.
limited. I didn't put a time limit on you.
Well,
We want to hear all about it. Take your time.
all right, so strength training, we brought one of the classes back through the senior programs this year that was kind of eliminated due to lack of instructors before COVID, and 1,802 people have attended that class since it was brought back. Fit and Fun Adventures, we allowed one of our independent contractors who does gymnastics, we allowed her now the opportunity to be able to do birthday parties or adventures. As she had that. This year was the first year we've done it. We had 18 of those, and all of those are always dictated by the independent contractor themselves. This year's spring baseball, 598 people, which is an uptick of 36 kids. So just so y'all know, that 598 kids, that's just recreational baseball players. That has nothing to do with the 52 competitive teams who pay Oxford for the ability to be able to use M-Trade Park. So if you just say, 10 kids on a team, that's an additional 520 kids in the Oxford area. So you're looking at 1,200 kids just playing baseball
Wow.
out there. Flag football numbers at 393 this year. It's up close to 50. But you can see the 7-year history there. We were as high as 438 in 2020. Then that's the year coming back out of COVID, when the tackle football teams did not form that year. We got a big influx of teams then. Last year we started the cheerleading program and the volleyball program, but they have both grown in size. We up to nearly 100 kids now in youth volleyball, just in the second year with that sport. And if y'all hadn't been to some of our basketball games or flag football games, our little cheerleader girls that come out there and play, that's certainly fun to watch. Fall break camp this year, we had 49 kids join in that. If y'all know the schools added a week in their calendar that they weren't in the school. And what we try to do every time there's a break of at least 2 to 3 days in the school calendar, we try to offer parents some sort of care for their child. And next year, and actually in this summer, what it's going to end up is, because of the new school calendar, we're adding 2 weeks to our day camp program. So we're going from 8 weeks to 10 weeks in this calendar year. One of my favorite events that we had this year was a brand new event called the Power Wheels Derby. It was aimed at 2 to 4 year old kids to bring their Power Wheels out. We had that in the parking lot of our activities center. It was a really cool event. Over 40 kids and Power Wheels were there that day, being involved with that. Programs at the pool this year, we had 16 in deep water aerobics, which was a class of 8 in 2 different months there. It's the first year we've been able to get, we had a physical therapist in that was running those programs. A couple years ago, we made the effort to bring in all of our minis programs. So when I say minis programs, mini kickers as far as soccer, mini dribblers in basketball, mini sluggers in baseball. We brought those all back in-house. And over the last couple of years, we went from around 40 kids in mini kickers, and we can now take, we got to 243 this year. So that was a really good program for them. And we just did it with basketball. So we went from real low numbers to 71 this year with that. Added some speed and agility, soccer clinics, and skateboard classes through this year. If we get through League of Champions this year, which is our special needs program, had 105 participants this year through the 4 sports that we did. That does not include volleyball, which we expect to put on our schedule and calendar this year to be able to come through. Our reach, as far as people who have accounts on our registration software, is 9,209. So every week that we send out newsletters, we're getting our information to at least 9,000 residents. And our open rate is higher, is around 35 to 40% typically on our newsletters that come through. Got a very supportive board, that we work with, that I work with monthly. Proud to do that and proud to be a part of City of Oxford.
Well, Seth, these numbers are amazing. I can't imagine, honestly, since I don't look at the Park Commission stuff every single day. It is hard for me to imagine how, with your staff, you organize this many people in this many different activities. So kudos to you and to your staff for that, because that is a whole lot of people in Oxford, Mississippi that are being taken care of and entertained, and places for kids to show up after school, and just, lots of healthy outdoor and indoor activities. And, we get comments sometimes about, well, my kid doesn't play sports. Well, take a look at all the things on this list that have nothing to do with sports. And I am so impressed with all that y'all are doing. So thank you for that, and to your staff. And I see your board president out there. Thank you, Don, and to the rest of the board. I know that it's a big job and a big responsibility and takes a lot of time and effort, and we appreciate you.
As you can see, the numbers that keep coming through, we will definitely be coming to y'all for more help through the future as our numbers continue to rise.
Wonderful. Well, I know you'll need it. Yes, thank you. That is a great report. All right. So next on our agenda is to consider a request to convert the Avent Park tennis courts to pickleball courts. It looks like we've got a bunch of pickleballers in the audience tonight. Welcome.
They certainly enjoy our facilities that we do are provided for them now. All of those are certainly out there a good bit. But what we come for you to today is to seek permission to go look for cost that it would cost the city in order to transform Avent tennis courts into pickleball courts. My board, OPC board, did vote to move forward on being able to convert those courts. Obviously, that decision will have to be made by this board before that goes in, but I'm here just to ask y'all for permission, and would y'all like to see entertain those numbers, what it would cost to convert it for that.
All right, board.
If I could just say one thing, Seth, I mean, I know, I don't know if it needs to be somebody from the audience or you, but maybe you want to explain why it's better to convert. I'm the liaison. As the mayor said, I hadn't been to that many meetings.
Well, I didn't say it where everybody else could hear me.
I know, but I have been there during the pickleball discussions. And why it's important to actually convert all of them instead of like half or two or what, or well, it is half, but it kind of explain what we're talking about here.
All right, so I will start off by this. Pickleball is growing, definitely. We do have 20 fantastic courts at Stone Park and at John Leslie courts now. Tennis courts,
yeah.
That's right. We've already taken all of the tennis courts at Avent Park out of any rotation for any tournament play anyway. When you paint the pickleball lines on those courts, they can no longer be played with USTA sanctioned events. It just can't happen. But that's okay. 20 can, the way things are going now, 20 for us and doing those tournaments are fine. If you were to play doubles tennis on all 4 of those courts, you're getting 16 people involved. If we build the 12 tennis, if we convert them over and have the 12 pickleball courts, we're talking about 48 people at any one time can be enjoying pickleball out there. The importance of it being, from it being a temporary facility as we do now into a permanent facility, I think it at that point, it just speaks that the city is committed to moving forward and looking at long-term for pickleball. This gives the original 12 courts. It does take 24 to get into state or get into regional competitions for that, but it does show a commitment from the city if we do move forward with that.
I thought it was my understanding that you also could host tournaments. You just can't host the ones you're talking about if you have the.
Yeah, I mean, invitational tournaments, which is the same things that we do now or anyone else could do. Okay. Even when we lease the courts out or rent the courts out, yes, you can play any invitational tournament. It's kind of, it's to bring it back to something probably more y'all are more familiar with in baseball, softball tournaments. As a tournament director, you can kind of dictate what you want on the court. I mean, one of the things I used to say is you can dictate somebody wear a red sock and a blue sock, because that's just your house rules. Just because the size of our courts may not match that of a sanctioned facility doesn't mean that we can't host really good tournaments here.
Say that again.
Which one?
About the
red sock and blue sock?
No,
just kidding.
About the size of the court in.
All right, so it's not the size of the court. I've said that several times, and that doesn't necessarily, the size of the court's going to be static. It's the space in between the courts that comes into question. So by USA Pickleball standards right now, our 12 courts that we do have or can have at Avent Park do meet the minimum requirements with space in between the courts to be able to be if we were to just go straight resurface now. Okay.
I'm not versed in pickleball,
okay,
than I played it in 4th grade.
So they didn't even have it then.
Yeah, they did. It was it was done in the 60s. So it was invented in the 60s by a CIA director.
Okay.
So anyway.
And 20 years later, you were born.
That's right.
Keep going.
So, but my understanding is the 4 courts there, the 2 courts. There's 4 courts total. You get 8
for, for
tennis
tennis
courts.
courts, correct.
Total. You
We can
get,
play 8. We can put 12 pickleball courts out there.
once it's all cleared out.
Well, I mean, we've got 12 out there now painted. Really, if we were to host a tournament today, which these great people of the newly formed Oxford Pickleball Association are going to do soon, I would tell them you really can't use but 10 courts out there, because when we first converted the first few, we tried to put 8 on each side, and they're just too close. And so now, if you were going to host a tournament, we can do 10. But that's the courts on the left. We do have 6 that can be used now.
Mayor, I would just say, since this might all be new to people, I mean, if right now they're just asking for us to get prices, and then, you know, I certainly don't know why we wouldn't go ahead and do that. I don't think that will cost us anything, unless there's just nobody here wants to do that. I mean, I'd entertain a motion for us to do
John,
that.
I'm gonna just say this, that I'm not against doing this, but right now we don't have a price.
Right, that's
We
what I
don't have a
said.
Plan. I didn't know how many courts we were gonna have. And usually when we do something like this, we have a plan in place, we have a pricing in place, and then we.
Well, that's
start.
why he's here. He's
Well,
asking.
the agenda item, in the agenda item says, consider request to convert the Avent Park tennis courts to pickleball courts. It does not say request permission to get a quote. So you're both right.
You're correct.
But it's, you know, and I'm always the wet blanket. Apparently that's what this job is. But, I'm not opposed to converting them to pickleball courts. I'm opposed to doing it in the middle of a budget year where that was not budgeted for. That's just, we're right in the middle of a budget year, and if that's something that you get prices for now, so that in 3 months when we start having discussions about what your planned projects are for the next year, I'm down with that. But, you know, we decided as a board, just for all the pickleballers in the audience, that we had 2 priorities. Construction prices have gone through the roof. And so we actually had a list of 5 priorities that we had to narrow down to 2. We narrowed those down to being renovation of the Oxford Enterprise Center and making it the Oxford Police Department instead of spending the money to build a whole new facility, and then doing a new community pool. And this board decided that those are our 2 top priorities. So anything else that gets added right now is money taken away from the 2 priorities that this board determined are our top 2 priorities. And we hadn't made headway on those 2 projects yet. And so I'm not at all opposed to hearing a price. I mean, that can't hurt anybody to get a price and at least know, because right now, I mean, yeah, we're fine with them being pickleball courts, but we have no idea what it costs. So, you know, I am fine with that. And I mean, I think that's what John's saying is.
Yeah, that's when he said that's what I'm here for today. I'm like, well, let's move forward on that, and then we can, you know, I will say this in the meetings I've been in, which this obviously it'll change, but I think the prices you quoted were anywhere from 87,000 to about 100 and what was it, 25 or 50,000 to do. So, you know, we're not talking about, you know, a huge thing, but it's still money that we don't have budgeted.
Yep. Enter the wet blanket.
Well, I think we get the plan. I mean, we get one shot at moving this forward at Avent Park. We want to get it done right, but I also want to make sure that we get in, if there's something else that we need to do at Avent Park to increase the number of people that be coming to Oxford to do these tournaments, I'm all for it. So, I mean, be thinking about that as well. I mean, I think Kenny's over there going, yes, we need pickleball because we can get people. So think of that as well, too.
So yes. Okay.
But my name is Nora Capwell, and I am the president of the newly formed Oxford Pickleball Association, and I'm an avid 4-5 tennis player as well as a pickleball player. And I believe this conversion would greatly benefit our community. As we mentioned, how pickleball is taken off. There's 4.8 million Americans playing it, and it continues to grow. You go to OPC Monday through Saturday, you'll see 40, 60 people sitting there waiting to play. You go to Avent courts, same situation. So it's definitely just a big growing sport here in Oxford. We believe that converting the Avent courts to pickleball courts is a cost-effective solution to meeting this demand. Pickleball courts can be created within the existing infrastructure of the tennis courts, which would save the city the cost of building new courts from scratch. By converting these courts to pickleball courts, we will make better use of these underutilized tennis courts. I live down the street from Avent, and these courts prior to pickleball sat unused for much of the year. The majority of the tennis community uses the 20 courts available at John Leslie. If we convert the Avent courts, we can make them available for play year-round and maximize their use in the pickleball demand. Community engagement, providing more opportunities for people to play pickleball can help engage the community and promote a healthy lifestyle. It can also help to bring people of all ages and demographics together and foster a sense of community. And then it also meets the needs of active retirees. As Oxford has been highlighted as one of the top retirement destinations in the country, this would add another benefit for retirees. The city could meet the needs of this demographic and provide them with more opportunities for physical activity and socialization. And speaking of hosting tournaments, by increasing the number of courts available for play, more tournaments could be held, which would bring more visitors and generate more revenue for the local community. Hosting tournaments can bring in significant revenue for local business, including hotels, restaurants, and shops. In conclusion, we believe that converting these tennis courts to pickleball court is a win-win for our community. I think that we just want to know, can we convert it? Yes or no? And then we understand the money aspect, and we're coming mid-year, but our association is more than willing to step up and raise the funds to get the courts. And we've said anywhere between 60 and 75,000 is kind of what we're thinking. But
Now you're talking.
Yep.
yeah, I mean, we're more than, we've said since day one that we
You
would
should have
do
led with that, sister.
Yeah, and we're more than happy to do that.
That's your lead-in.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
again, it is not, I mean, I don't think this board is prepared tonight to vote on whether or not to convert it until we know what it's going to cost. I mean, do y'all agree with that?
Yeah, but I would say that with that, I think we're willing to do that. I mean, I think it's a good thing. We just want it done. We got one shot at it. Let's do it the right way. So
Yeah.
For me, I don't have a plan. I don't have a cost in front of me, so I can't say we can.
Well, that's what
Well,
the
we
agenda
were
item
told
for is,
that's
for them
not-
to go get quotes.
Yeah.
I mean, if the agenda item says go get quotes, then I'll be.
That's what it says.
Well, they,
No,
yeah,
we
they
don't.
got quotes.
I don't know what you're looking at.
Yeah, we're Superior, like we met in October and started getting
Yeah,
quotes.
you're the agenda.
Yeah.
Wrong number.
So to me, it is the board willing to have the conversation of conversion from tennis to pickleball?
Absolutely.
And if they're willing to have that, I can have the.
We just need to know. And unfortunately, I have a ton of good ideas every day. Most of them I forget by noon, but there are a whole lot of things I'd like to do, but it's the price tag that ultimately this board has to make decisions based on a lot of times. And so that, I mean, you know, I think if what Seth is saying is that you are looking for permission to go and seek quotes, that would take a motion that I'm sure John Morgan will make
Sure.
to,
So moved.
Second.
all right, all in favor? Any opposed? All right.
Can we leave these? These are what pickleball is happening around us. And this is,
Sure.
so y'all can just kind of.
I just looked at that. Starkville did theirs
Yeah,
like a
I
long
mean,
time ago.
everyone around us is converted to permanent outdoor courts except us. So we kind of feel like we're behind the 8 ball and want to get a little more progressive with what we're doing.
All right. So y'all let us know when you have a price for us, and that'll be wonderful.
was speaking earlier, I got a quote, I have a quote, and it's just one. It's $87,000 for all fours. We didn't even ask anybody else. But I'm gonna probably tell you that's on the high end. So that's, just know that's. the
Okay.
range that's gotta be. And one other thing to bring up, to get really big regional, I don't know if y'all are familiar with Opelika, Alabama. They got 24 covered courts. They hosted 2 or 3 tournaments last year with over 800 people attending all over the Southeast. 24 is the magic number. So in our long-term range, we could get 12 here, find another 12. We would be hosting those kind of tournaments. Numerous times per year.
Is the same company you're gonna get the quote from the resurface, one that could get a quote to do a whole 12 courts?
Yes, absolutely.
I do have other quotes. What I don't like to do is come in and give you amounts because
Now, anybody that's bidding on it's already heard the price. Yeah.
But I do have other quotes outside of the.
I mean, I would really like to see where we can get that tournament that you're talking about. The 24 court tournament.
Well, we have a package, y'all. Two Below's about to spend 1.2 on 12 courts. The mayor went down to Opelika and liked the covered aspect so much, he's going back to their city council to see if they can put a cover over the 12 brand new courts. So, yeah, it's. The growth is.
We need a money whip. That's what we need.
I just want to give you kind of this,
Yeah.
this in the million to resurface 12, it's under 100. Just to give you that.
And thank y'all for being willing to help us.
Thank y'all.
That's all.
Yes, thank you. All right. Request permission to approve a subscription to LexisNexis for the court. Ashley, are you?
Yes,
you are.
Nikki was not able to join us. This is for a subscription that is, Brian, you had.
So moved. Yeah, I was gonna say second.
All in favor?
I was gonna say so.
Any opposed? Request permission to accept the quote for workers' comp insurance for the
Thank
Oxford
you.
University Transit Department. Donna?
Broker was able to get 3 quotes, which is the first time I've ever seen a quote since I've been with Oxford Transit.
Wow.
Other than the one that's been with us, which was Berkeley Net.
Yeah.
And it came in at $90,272. I did do some research on Pi Insurance. They did come very highly rated, and asking permission that
Move we
we.
accept.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request permission to advertise for proposals for the 2023 Holly Jolly Holidays project at M Trade Park. Kenny?
Okay, so we would like to request permission to advertise for quotes to expand Holly Jolly Holidays. We would like to do a light feature possibly at M Trade Park. And we know it might not happen in this fiscal year because of the reasons you just stated with pickleball, but maybe for next year, we want to get some numbers.
All right. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Request permission to approve a parade assembly permit for the Oxford Skateboard Association. Chief?
Yes, ma'am. I spoke with the organizer today. We're going to try to reroute that. His request was to go from the square south of Lamar University and then
Yeah,
back to Bramlett, which
saw
I
that.
told him would take a significant amount of officers to hold
Yeah.
those intersections. So we're going to look at looping it the back way down East Jackson. And so I think that'll be fine. I think that'll save us. It'll be safer. And then we can handle that on patrol.
Ooh, we skateboarding on those hills.
That's fine. It's
I
just
know.
coming up.
Knee pads and helmets required. All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Susie Safety, inmates coming out. Request approval of the Oxford Fire Department Paramedic School reimbursement policy. Chief Gardner.
So yes, ma'am, we have a program now where we will reimburse you for taking EMT. This will be for the paramedic program. Says you got to be a full-time employee. You have to be done with your 1001 certification, and then it goes through what all is required. You go to, it says what the policy will pay for. It's tuition, books, and additional fees like registration, things like that. Some things are excluded. You do not have to go to Northwest Community College, but we prefer that because they have agreed to invoice us when someone does go through their program. We've also got the same agreement with ICC. because we have had people ask about going to ICC, so they told me that they would invoice us also. You have to be approved by the board and the fire chief in order to do this. Once you do go through the class, you do have to pass your national registry. If you do not complete your national registry within 36 months, you will need to pay back a portion of the school, which will be, prorated or in full, depending on how long that is. And if you do not receive your national registry certification within 12 months, you have to pay us back for sending you to school. And it also says this is not guaranteed. It will be, depending on budgetary findings every year. So each year, if we don't have the money to do this, we won't do it.
Sounds like a good
Good
plan.
work. Sounds like everything we've talked about is included. Is there a motion?
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Request permission to apply for a $200,000 grant through the Mississippi Office of Homeland Security. Would anyone say no to that?
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Request permission to accept the cigarette litter prevention grant from Keep America Beautiful in the amount of $20,000.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request permission to approve a list of budget amendments and reallocations. Ashley?
Mostly a housekeeping item for this, most of them are net zero changes. There are a few.
Slipping that 288,000 in there.
It is right there on the sheet.
I
That is
see.
not slipping.
I know, she just said housekeeping, okay. So moved.
Did you have a question?
No.
Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Request permission to approve, oh, that's what we just did. Sorry, guys. Consider a professional services contract with Williams Engineering for construction, inspection, and testing of the Brittany Woods Connector Road project. Rihanna?
Yes, we want to hire Williams Engineering.
Perfect. Go ahead, so that we know what.
We want to hire Williams Engineering for the inspection of our Brittany Woods Connector Road project. It was designed in-house, which is why we don't have an engineer already under contract.
Right.
For the daily inspection. And this will free us up to continue our day-to-day operations. And Williams will do all the inspection and engineering testing.
Just wanted to make sure y'all understood why we were doing that. All right, the same motion by Keisha. Is there a second? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. All right, first reading of a proposed ordinance enlarging, extending, and defining the corporate limits and boundaries of the city of Oxford, Lafayette County, Mississippi, specifying the improvements to be made in the annexed territory and the municipal or public services to be rendered therein and for other purposes related thereto.
We read the boundaries.
That's okay. I'm going to let Pope. Pope wants to.
This is the first reading of what will turn into an ordinance, and once the ordinance is adopted, or assuming it's adopted after a public hearing next meeting, then there will be a petition filed for annexation. And there's been some calls to City Hall, people asking what this is. This is just a little tiny portion of 3 lots in Grand Oaks that are in the county. I think it.
Half
Well,
of the
there's-
lot
yeah,
is in the
half
county.
the lots,
Half the
right,
lot
half
is in
the
the
lots.
city and half the
And
lots
they're
in the county.
split. And so this is not, when you read the ordinance, or when you read the annexation ordinance, it has to describe the entire city limits as they exist, but it is not a large annexation. They've asked us to annex them. We can provide them services. We can provide them police and fire.
We're already
would
providing it to
respond
the front
anyway.
half of their lot.
Correct. And so it's just a confusing tax issue
It's just
and
first reading.
services issue as it stands. There'll be notice and a hearing
have
set
this
once
since
the
they don't have.
ordinance is passed.
All right, thank you. That was a first reading. So we will have a second reading and public hearing at our next meeting.
Mayor, I'd like to add that I have lost golf balls in the county and the city.
Congratulations. Or any of them in my backyard.
Oh, yes.
All right, I would ask the board to consider an executive session. All in favor? Any opposed?